Hello everyone and welcome to Startups Magazine and Mouser Electronics Creating a Positive Company Culture Remotely webinar. My name is Anna Flockett and I'm the new editor of Startups Magazine, and I'm sure as you all may know, this event was supposed to be held at Fora space in London, but with all the recent circumstances, I think it's best that we are all at home. So thank you for tuning in to the webinar. It's the first time we've done a webinar, so I hope everything goes smoothly, and please bear with us. I wanted to also give a massive thank you to Mouser Electronics for sponsoring the event and webinar. Mouser is a worldwide leading authorised distributor of semiconductors and electronic components for over 800 industry-leading manufacturers. Mouser is the go-to source for engineers who need the widest product selection, competitive pricing with no minimum orders, fast delivery and excellent service. So make sure you check them out. And we will be sending around more information and details for contacting them in our post-event mailer. So keep tuned for that. And we'll also be sending all you guys the brand new magazine after this webinar 24 hours before we actually release it. So please enjoy the exclusive version. We have a jam-packed full hour of useful information and guidance when it comes to not only company culture, but keeping the culture up when everyone is working remotely. So first we will have a little keynote from UP, from Career Collective, who will be covering the importance of inclusion and diversity. And then we'll move on to our panel chat with our experts, all about company culture. And again, with a focus on working remotely, because right now we all need it. There is a Q&A function at the bottom, oh, actually I've got a Q&A already. Mike McGlade has it started yet? I've just started, so you haven't missed anything. We're just doing the welcomes. So yeah, there's a little Q&A function at the bottom, so if you've got any questions for any of our speakers at any time, just type in there, and then once people have finished speaking, then I can read the questions out. At the end we will also have there's a raised hand function for all attendees, so if you have a question that you want to ask yourself, if you wait till the end, you can raise your hand and then you'll be able to physically ask which panelist you want, or all of them. But to start us off with today, Gabi from OpenMind Wellbeing for a Mindfulness session. So Gabi, over to you.
Hi, thanks so much for the introduction. So I'm Gabi Macra. As mentioned, I'm from OpenMind Wellbeing. We're just going to do a nice little short meditation mindfulness to kind of take ourselves from wherever we're coming from and just bring us into the space. So I'm going to ask you to take a nice comfortable seat, put your feet flat on the floor if you can, hands just resting on your thighs, and lengthen your spine, sitting up nice and straight, maybe opening up the shoulders just a little bit. And allow your chin to just come down towards your chest slightly, just relaxing your neck. Then I'll invite you to start to close your eyes. Just allow them to gently close shut. If for any reason that doesn't feel comfortable for you today, feel free to just point your gaze at the floor or the desk in front of you and maybe half close. But if it's comfortable, just closing the eyes completely. And just draw your awareness, your attention more inwards. Feel the feet on the floor. Your hands on your thighs, the back of your thighs and your sit bones, your bum on the seat beneath you. Spine nice and tall, the shoulders open, the head slightly bowed, the eyes closed. And just start to gently tune in to the rhythm of your breath. Maybe feeling an expansion and a contraction around your shoulders, your chest, your belly. And I'll invite you to take a nice deep inhale in through the nose, opening the mouth, and just allow the air to gently release through the mouth. Another inhale in through the nose. Exhale, really let it go through the mouth. And take one more in through the nose. Out through the mouth, and just lengthening the exhale as long as it's comfortable. And come back to the natural rhythm, come back to the center. And just draw your awareness, your attention right to the center of your chest, your heart center, the middle of your rib cage. And simply feeling the breath around that center, your chest, your rib cage opening, expanding. And the exhales, just releasing, letting go, letting everything soften a little bit more. And then just bring to mind wherever you've come from, whatever's going on before you stepped into this space. And then with your breath, just gently start to let that go. With every exhale, a little bit longer, releasing a little bit more. Whatever you need to let go to come into this space, start to feel it. Let go all the way through the tips of your fingers, all the way down to your toes. And just start to bring your awareness and your attention, your focus onto what's coming next. Maybe what you're looking to get out of the next hour. What mindset you want to be in, what kind of feeling you might want to leave with. And then start to focus on your inhales, and with these things in mind, just imagine you're filling up with them all through your chest, your shoulders. And on the exhale, letting them just settle into the body. Filling up all the way on the inhales, now down to the fingertips, to the toes, to the top of the head. Just start to feel the rhythm of the breath again. Bring your awareness back to the center, to the heart center. And just for the last few breaths together, just start to acknowledge and be aware that there's probably about 50, 60 people out there also dialed in. I'm going to share a space with, I'm going to learn with, ask questions with, and just connect with over the next hour. And when you're ready, just begin to gently open up the eyes, nice and slowly. Bring your awareness back into your space. And get ready for your keynote. I'll hand it back over.
Thank you, Gabi. That was really good. Something I'm sure most of us needed right now with all these big changes and stresses. So yeah, thank you for starting that off. Now going to pass over to UP for our exciting, intense keynote.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for the introduction. Mine is a little intensive, so let me just get it all set up. Sorry. So I will try and be as gentle with you all as I can. Okay, so my name's Upi. I'm the founder of Collectively, which is a people and culture strategy consultancy. So I was asked to talk to you guys about how to build a positive company culture. And I'm going to start off a little bit with about a bit of theory and then some case studies. I think that's the best way that people learn, and that's the way I learn. And how you can impact that into your own businesses. And then also talking about kind of just some tips now, I guess, for the challenges that we're all facing and kind of circumnavigating right now. So culture eats strategy for breakfast. So culture eats strategy for breakfast is a famous quote by the legendary management consultant, Peter Drucker. So when it comes to culture, it's really hard to define it, but it's even harder to kind of implement or change it. So that's why it's really best to kind of start early on and clearly define what's important to the business and its people. And especially at times like this, it kind of gives us a reflection point of what's important, what's going to be our new normal, and where do we go from here. So I take heed if you're kind of senior in your businesses, or even if you're not, any level of the kind of your startup journey. What has happened? What is culture? And I'm going to go into a little bit more, because I think that we think that culture is kind of the external facing, what people feel about the business, but actually there's a lot more that it kind of covers. So I'm going to do very quickly on a little bit of theory. So company culture is an integral part of the business. It affects every aspect of a company, from recruiting the best talent to improving employee satisfaction, all of which are obviously integral to a happy workforce. So in the absence of positive company work culture, many employees struggle to find real value in the work that they're doing. And this leads to a negative kind of consequences for your bottom line, for your business as a whole. So that's why Strategy is obviously essential, but if you don't have your engaged employees and you have everything else around it that supports them, the strategy is not going to really be implemented successfully. So for the last decade or so, within this kind of organizational developmental space, culture has kind of shifted to look at kind of more ideas that are more flexible, more innovative. And I think that's in line with how businesses have kind of adapted and iterated through, I guess, decades and seasons and changing. And then this is just a whole new iteration of how we're now completely becoming a digital workforce, or how we have to try and navigate that now with our businesses. So if I go to the next slide, this is a management model that was created by Jerry Johnson and Kevin Scholes in 1992. And essentially they call it a recipe for optimal company culture. And essentially it looks through 6 elements. And the reason that I thought it was interesting just to mention this, I'm not going to go into too much detail, is the fact that like I said earlier, like we just think of culture as one thing, but actually it kind of encompasses everything, and it kind of has different roots in different parts of our business on a holistic basis. So the 6 areas that they have identified in the paradigm of culture is stories and myths. So what do people say about your business? Who are the heroes and heroines within the business? So if you think of Apple, you would think of Steve Jobs, and you know, he didn't only revolutionize. At one point he was the villain in the company, but at one point he didn't only revolutionize that company, he's actually revolutionized that whole industry. Think of symbols. So symbols are what we typically identify with culture. So that's branding, physical office space, dress code, values. And then you think of power structures. So that's some peoples or groups have significant decision-making power within an organization. This comes into the inclusion and diversity thing. Rituals and routines cover the patterns of systemic behavior that are seen as normal. So sometimes that's positive, sometimes that's negative. When we talk about positive rituals and routines, that may be that you have a policy of getting back to any customers within a 24-hour period. That's a positive impact of like a ritual within your business. But actually a negative may be that there is underlying misogyny or sexism that goes unnoticed. And that's obviously a negative routine or ritual that's kind of prevalent in the business. Then there's control systems, so maintaining standards. And this covers everything from reward, promotion, salary, that's kind of all of that finance and quality part of the business. And then organizational structure essentially is who reports to who. Okay, so that's a little bit on that theory. And now I'm going to go into what impacts our culture. And there's lots of different things that obviously impact, and this will happen in some companies, some of them will happen in all, there'll be more things. These are just 4 that I wanted to highlight today. So in-group and out-group dynamics is a really big kind of issue within culture and getting culture right. So the brain is actually hardwired to categorize people as us and them. And this takes back to like prehistoric times. And actually it's the most ancient part of our brain, the amygdala. And it was our kind of fight or flight survival skill. And basically it makes shortcuts in our brains to when you assess a situation. So that skill can be a disruptor. It can create assumptions that thwart productive collaboration within the business. And so the kind of the signals of this are kind of race and gender, age, physical ability, mannerisms, personal interests, team preferences, political beliefs, etc. So from research that was compiled last year, over 40,000 plus employees in 125 companies, they found that out-group employees experience less empathy, they're judged more harshly by their co-workers, and feel less safe to speak up than their peers. So strong positive cultural norms that is fostered through inclusion and diversity and psychological safety, which is so important for everybody, lessen the negative effects of these in-group, out-group dynamics. So what I would ask you guys within your companies, do you have in-groups? Do you have out-groups? Do they exist within your organization? How is that perceived as powerful? Which ones are perceived as lacking as power? Maybe have like kind of a little deep dive into that if you're kind of within the business, and that might foster some thought. So the key to getting this right is empathy and inclusion. And one thing, so I'm going to bring up a little case study with a client. So Coca-Cola Europe, they actually changed their holiday policy. And it was very simple. It's a really simple hack that they did. So essentially what they have done is in the UK, the bank holidays that we get are sorted by the Christian calendar. And they said, well, actually, let's be a little bit more inclusive. So someone's Jewish and they want to take off Yom Kippur, then let's let them have that option to have that as a holiday leave. So it's just a really simple thing that just creates this sense of inclusion and belonging. And it's not going to cost you much as a business. It's not going to, you know, impact you guys that much, but it could be a really profound kind of inclusion tactic. Okay, so then power dynamics is the next one. This refers to the way that people use power in groups and individual interactions. So a manager can use hierarchical powers in very different ways, from coercion, which is obviously is less healthy, to influence and empowerment, which is most healthy. And that is obviously what we want to focus on, especially in this kind of climate. You want to empower the people within your business, especially the people who hold some influence within your business, and help them kind of rally the troops or create that kind of cohesion that you have sometimes within the company, but it might be fragmented when you're all isolated in your own homes. So employees are often not comfortable saying no to even inappropriate requests from a manager because of the potential consequences. And this is how the power dynamics plays out. So what we really need is we need leaders to be empathetic and vulnerable. So Google actually tried to create a completely flat organizational structure when they kind of first started their business. And actually it lasted for 6 months, and it was really terrible because everybody was asking questions to the two founders and it was just too much. So you do need some kind of structure, but it needs to be a really honest, open, and respectful. That's what it needs. Respect is the main thing. So you could look at reverse mentoring. That's always a really good way of kind of changing power dynamics. There's another example which I love, which is the DOTS, which is essentially like the LinkedIn for the creative industry. So the founder of that, Pip Jameson, told me that she has like, I think it's a monthly or it's a quarterly. She has a 5 feedback questionnaire, and it's completely anonymous. It's a survey that's sent out to all employees. And she says she dreads getting it. And she reads all of the answers on a Saturday, but she dreads getting it. But it's really impactful for her business because it's completely anonymous. People can be really open. And one of the questions are, if you were CEO, what would you do differently? Which is just opening yourself up to be really vulnerable and to understand, you know, how can you improve your business? How can you innovate? So then we go to organizational norms and practices. Now, every organization has its behavioral norms and practices, the unspoken and the spoken rules. The spoken and the unspoken rules about what is acceptable or not in the workplace. In companies, there is an idealized top-down view of what those norms and practices should be, but there's also a bottom-up reality of actually how things really work. So understanding the gap between the ideal and how things and the real is a really important step. So how can you do this? You can improve top-down messaging. Role modeling by company leaders is essential, and skill building for all employees. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. So when we think of role modeling, that's a really good way for you guys to, like, if you want to get, say, a policy put through. So, for example, I think it was the CEO of Unilever. He was they had a really great parental leave policy, but actually there wasn't much take up on it. And they were like, well, how do we address this? How do we get people? We've got these policies available, but there's so much stigma around, and it was the fathers not wanting to take this up. How do we make this become like a norm? We want to destigmatize this, and should be an acceptable kind of situation in the organization. And so the CEO of that business actually would call up when they found out that someone was expecting a child. They would call up and say, actually, I would encourage you to do this. I would encourage you to take this leave. And that's really important. I work with a lot of companies, and that's one of the first things I will say. You need to role model behavior that you want to see in the business. And, you know, just by being there, it kind of creates this opportunity to others to think that, oh, well, I can do this too. So that's really, really important. And then another one, which I thought was really interesting is, and this is actually one of Snapchat's mantras, is murder drama. So calling out bad behavior, stopping drama before it creates a toxic work environment. It's super important to create safety. You want to make sure that your employees feel safe at all times. And especially now, if your employees, everybody's kind of fretting about, do I have a job? Do I not have a job? What's happening? How, you know, a client's going to pay? Really try and create as much as you can within the limits that you can, create that, impact of safety within your business, and be really transparent. Okay, now I'm going to go on to the bit that the impact that is my favorite. It's what I speak about the most with companies, is unconscious bias. So at any one time, we're having 11,000 thoughts a second, but actually our brain can only process that 40 to 50. So it makes these shortcuts. So going back to this in-group, out-group politics and the way that our mind works, This is where unconscious bias, basically, they're learned stereotypes. It's shaped by our life experience that influence our judgment about others. These beliefs, often around social and identity groups, are deeply ingrained. They're automatic. Most importantly, they're unintentional, and everyone has them. And even though you can do unconscious bias training, you will never get rid of your bias completely. And I think people need to understand that, because it's a really deep dive into actually going, oh, well, I thought I viewed the world this way, but actually I have these biases in my head purely formed from, you know, external factors. As talent pools grow more diverse, and we're all working alongside colleagues from a variety of backgrounds and experiences, increased diversity has a positive effect, driving better decision making, greater innovation, and it also demands greater awareness and skill from employees trying to navigate the complex world of social dynamics within that. And it also leads, the main positive of diversity and inclusion and understanding this unconscious bias is cognitive diversity. If you understand maybe some of the challenges that some of the people, or respect for the challenges or the privilege that some may or may not have, you're able to bring those people in. Sometimes you know, we're kind of sidelined and we think a certain way and we've got complete blind spots. But when we open ourselves up to kind of greater team dynamics, some people might have a blind spot that might not see that blind spot the way you do. And that's the kind of the best way. So personally, how can you hack that? Open your own experience, watch a different language film, or read a book that you wouldn't necessarily read. Normally I would say go to an art gallery you wouldn't normally go to, or something, experience a cultural experience that you wouldn't normally experience. A really good way of how this is evidenced in workplace. So if we look at the orchestra in the 1980s, they had a problem that there was only about 5% that were female players. And so they were like, how can we address this? So they thought, okay, maybe it's just done on looks. Maybe it's just the person seeing that there is a woman over a man and they preference the man. And so they put a screen. But actually it helped, but it didn't help so much, because actually what they realized is that you could hear the pitter-patter, the click-clack of the heels when women took the stage, and actually the bias was still present. So what they did is the hack that they created is they carpeted the stage, and then you couldn't hear anything, and it led to, I think there's like a 25 to 30% increase in women within the orchestras within the next kind of 5 to 10 years. So fundamental things that kind of change that we would not necessarily consider. Okay, so now I want to go to the main piece, which is the fostering positivity. So what can we do? I've put this down as provide meaning and clear values, collaboration and honest communication, inclusivity, wellness development, and then transparency. So for meaning and values, it is important to have a set of clear core values that are communicated effectively and discussed with your employees so they feel that they're part of it. You can't just have a mission statement on your website. You shouldn't just have buzzwords that say, oh, we're a clean company. You need to really live those values. So one of the clients I work with, they're a construction company, one of the largest construction companies in the UK, and they have a lot of focus on kind of environmental policies and green living, and they try to, as much as they can, build that into their construction business. But actually, when I went to their head offices, they live that. That was everywhere. The produce in the canteen was all locally sourced. The soaps in the bathroom were locally sourced. They had eco toilets. Like, it's just like kind of, if that's what you want, if you want to live that kind of impact value, try and do as much as you possibly can so that employees realize it's important to you as a business. One of the most important things, I think, is meaning and purpose. And that's more important now than ever before. Give employees specific examples of how their roles are positively impacting the company and its clients. For example, during the President J.F. Kennedy's tour of NASA in 1962, just before a first person landed on the moon, he interrupted his tour and walked over to a man and said, "Hi, I'm Jack Kennedy. What are you doing?" And it was a janitor, and the janitor said, "Well, Mr. President, I'm helping put a man on the moon." And it probably sounds a kind of a bit farcical, like the guy's cleaning the corridors. But in reality, no matter how large or small your role, you're contributing to the larger story unfolding within your business. So when your entire team embraces that type of attitude and belief system, incredible things will happen. You need to be positive. So in order for positive culture you need to lead by example, express gratitude, and remain open and optimistic during difficult situations, now more than ever. Employees are much more likely to engage in positive behavior when they see their employers doing so too. The next point is collaboration and communication. Listen. Listening is one of the easiest ways employers can start to build positive culture and make sure employees feel their voices are heard and valued. Honest communication is key. So think about how you can do. So a lot of people do 360 audits, and that's really good. Simon Sinek, who is a motivational speaker and an author, his team have monthly meetings, and they ask them to come to the meetings with 3 positives and 3 negatives about them. They go in front of everybody and they take it in turns to stand up, and they say they 3 positives. They say 3 negatives first, and anybody around the table can add to those negatives about that person. It's like critical feedback, and all they can say is thank you. And then they do the same with the positives, and all they can say is thank you. And the next person, what this encourages, it encourages like people who are kind of more junior in the company are able to have their say, then they probably wouldn't be able to it kind of creates that kind of open communication and respect for each other. Socializing, it's obviously hard to do that virtually in our homes, but now more than ever, obviously, socializing workplace relationships are essential to positive company culture. When employees barely know their colleagues or rarely interact, there's no way for any kind of culture to grow. So leaders need to provide employees opportunities for social interactions in the workplaces. Ukes Net-a-Porter have the head of D&I that I was having a conversation with a couple of weeks ago, she told me that she's created a global social community, and they have virtual events, which actually is probably perfect given the situation now. And, she was actually in lockdown because she was based in Italy at the time. So foresight on her part, because she created that last year. But think about what you can do now. Could you do like a kind of when you're all taking a break from the project work, maybe think about doing like a mini coffee break and a catch up or something, so that everybody feels engaged, or do like a little party together or something that you would, if you'd normally have like kind of some social event during the week. Inclusivity and wellness. So a positive workplace is one where all employees are valued, supported, and nurtured, irrespective of gender, sexual orientation, or colour. All employees should have equal opportunities to progress and equal access to all the perks and rewards on offer. You should value individual differences in the workforce and make them feel welcome and accepted. So include signage that supports inclusivity, be clear and positive about it. For example, JP Morgan have a head of Black talent development, because they're so wanting to be so open and say, look, we want to develop our kind of people of color as much as anybody else. And so now they've really said, okay, we haven't been giving as much to those people, and now we're going to make sure. So they've hired someone to actually take charge of that, which I think was it's a really positive sign. Employee wellness is a massive part of this, and I think that given now there's going to be lots of social anxiety, I think there's probably going to be a lot of kind of uptake in mental health issues, just because we don't know what's going on, and it kind of creates this hysteria and fear. So you can't expect to foster positive company culture without healthy employees. So think about ways you can offer to your staff. So obviously everybody kind of like tends to have the team kind of out kind of socials and out like away days and stuff like that, but think about what ways you can try and do that remotely, and and I kind of mentioned a little bit before. And then continual learning. You want your staff to stay engaged and continuously develop. So if I go down to this, I don't know if you can all see this, but this is probably one of my favorite ever cartoons. And I think this is so important. So it's Corporate Dilemma, Investing in Employees. What if we train them and they leave? What if we don't and they stay? That's the kind of the key to understanding that if you don't continuously develop your employees, you're not going to be competitive compared to your competitors. You're not going to have the innovations that they may have. And then the last point is transparency. Having a transparent policy for progression and promotion that offers staff an opportunity to measure their performance. Measurable performance indicators that mean there would be healthy competition. Dramatically helps avoid negative feelings and resentment amongst team members towards each other. So when the goals are positively reinforced and achievements are recognized and celebrated, it leads to employees feeling valued, and in turn creates positive feeling in the workplace. And also look at there's obviously a lot around gender pay gap reporting in the UK, and obviously that doesn't work for companies at less than 250, but maybe have a look at it anyway. So if you think of the CEO of Salesforce, Mark Benioff, he now gender pay gap reporting is kind of mandated by the UK for companies over 250 employees. Now he obviously has a very large company in the UK, but because he's an American company, he didn't need to do it. And actually it was senior women in the US actually came to him and said, look, there is an issue in our business. What are we doing? And so over 3 years, they did an audit and they realized they had a massive discrepancy. And he was kind of so shocked and disgusted that this was happening in his business. He actually spent $8.7 million correcting just a discrepancy in pay over 3 years. And they kept, like, it was first year it was 3 million, then the next, and they just kept until they got to the place, and they constantly monitored that. And I think that's really important, a really encouraging signal to the people in your business that shows that we're transparent, we're fair, it's equity. Okay, so now I'm going to just wrap up because I think I've been talking for far too long. Having a transparency policy, I saw this today and I thought this just kind of summed up, and this is a quote by Bain & Co. And think of it's about uncertainty in the current time. So think of a recession as a sharp curve on a racetrack. The best place to pass competitors, but requiring more skill than straightaways. The best drivers apply the brakes just ahead of the curve. They take the excess costs out. Turn hard toward the apex of the curve. Identify the short list of projects that will form the next business model. And accelerate hard out of the curve. Spend and hire before the markets have rebounded. And I thought it was brilliant advice and kind of would be nice kind of summary on today's topic. I just want to give you some tips for remote working that I think would be kind of practical for given the climate. So check in with your teams, keep your people engaged. A lot of people are using obviously Zoom for calling. Slack also now have a video feature, which is great. So accountability is really important. Make sure you're keeping yourself accountable, you're keeping your team accountable. It's really hard to do this remotely, but it's really important that this is still happening. A digital dashboard helps with that, so that everyone knows what's going on, everyone knows where they are in the process. There's lots of tools that you can use online so that everybody knows where they are in terms of different projects. Record your meetings. So if you're having meetings like this, record and make them accessible to everyone. So if someone wasn't able to make it because of different time constraints, or there's different pressures, there's like children everywhere, whatever, or they're looking after kind of vulnerable people, then that make it accessible so that everybody feels like they're included and they understand what's happening. Because when we're remote from each other, we can feel like we're being left out, and that's what you don't want to have. So online meetings also have to be super intentional. It's harder than face-to-face meetings, so encourage and be conscious on external factors, like I've just said. This is not a time for transactional leadership. It's time for empowering leadership. So empower your emerging leaders too. So people that you think are engaged and have some sphere of influence. Maybe it's a time now to really empower them with projects, and also ask your team what they need and they want. So it's a time for co-designing and collaboration. And that's me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, UP. That was great. Like, I've learned so much about so many companies. We have just time for one quick question that was sent in. Someone wrote in and said, when it comes to implementing a positive company culture, is it easier in a large corporation, which perhaps has the resources and the dedicated HR department, or is it easier in a smaller business, which perhaps has the more in tune to individual staff members and more flexible to open to change, or does it really not matter?
I think it's not easy in either, to be honest. It shouldn't be easy because you've got to make sure it's right. Sometimes it can be really easy, and that's great, but that's when you've got all the people that you're hiring are in line with what you're saying and what you believe, and they believe the same things, which is amazing. And if you get to that point, that's exceptional. That's what you want employees. But I think in the startup sphere, when people are talking about investment, very early on you hire people, and it is about your people. Your culture is evidenced through your people. So when you hire people very on, when you get to Series A, you kind of see this dramatic intake in new people, and to get that culture that was built so tightly within that smaller environment, which can happen really easily in smaller environments. Yes, I agree, it can. And in larger, there's lots more bureaucracy, and it's kind of more of an overarching cultural model. And some people will fall into it, some people won't. Some people will live and breathe it, some people won't. There'll be outliers in that sphere. And where it's more evident, you can see the outliers in a smaller company just because of there's less places to hide. But I think that when we've got to be really like, so when we're talking about startup world and the ecosystem within that space, it's really important that culture is you have a really strong defined culture, and looking at those 6 spheres of where culture can permeate. Think about, okay, actually, what do I want in all of those for my business? Or, you know, if you're an employee, where do I feel like we're lacking? And maybe take that to some of the leaders in the business, or if you have that influence, do that, because it is important. So I think that, yeah, it just depends. It just depends. I think that you can make it work in both. And yeah, and it shouldn't come through. So in a large organization, it comes through, even in a small, it shouldn't come through HR. It should come through from like a CEO. It should come through from a leadership team. It should actually be collective, and HR shouldn't be the burdens of it. It should be prevalent at every level of the business.
Yeah, perfect. Oh, thank you very much.
Thanks.
And thank you for your speech. It was great. I'm now going to move on to my panels. We're going to be discussing now positive company culture remotely, because I don't really think there's a better time to do so. So hopefully we can come out the other end feeling better about this whole working from home business. So panel, if we could go around and just get you to do a little introduction of yourself, explain a little bit about what you do, and then if you could give me your definition of a positive company culture. Shall we do ladies first? Katrina, do you want to start us off?
My name's Katrina Larkin, and I'm co-founder of Fora, and Fora are workplaces, and we have 12 locations in London, and we have one in Reading as well. And our workplaces go beyond the office. They're about elevating the daily experiences of people who work in our buildings by offering them a better day at work. We let them bring their whole selves into the office. They can come in and they can partake in wellness classes, they can participate in talks, and they can form a really strong network with like-minded people.
Amazing. And what would you define as the ultimate positive company culture?
Camaraderie. And I think right now that's a really important word. And because at Fora we took the culture really important since the very beginning, when there were only a handful of us. And our culture is ingrained in who we are, and it unifies us. And right now, during these challenging times, it's that camaraderie which has enabled us to bond together and carry forth with our vision, and actually enjoy being at work. Though we're not physically in a space together, we are out there and we're supporting each other.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Katrina. Jess, can I pass over to you?
Yeah, of course. Hi everyone. My name is Jess Gosling. I wear a lot of hats. By day I work for the British Civil Service, and by night I co-run the Growth and Grace Collective. So G&G, as we like to be known, is a global network that seeks to connect, inspire and empower our community in all stages of their lives, really. We seek to elevate people out of social and mobility issues, removing the financial burden of networking and professional development by offering really a wholesome program of events and skills-based workshops. We're basically wanting to create a home for dreamers, doers, the go-getters with different expertise, so we can really learn and support each other to collaborate to gain new skills and also move up in our respective careers and explore new possibilities. I think having changed career paths probably about, I think I'm on my 5th move now. I've come from startup, tech, online remote working, being like one of those digital nomads for a time, which is really fun. And also being in academia. The one thing about positive culture that I think is really important is being inclusive from the get-go. So having those values being fully embedded and ensuring that all voices can be heard in a respectful way.
Yes, very important. Thank you. And Rob, finally, best or last, can you please introduce yourself and tell me what your definition of positive company culture is?
Yeah, for sure. So hi, I'm Rob Grundel. I don't like this description, but I am a coach. But what I do is I bring rooms together, and I've been doing that for all my life. I started out life as a software developer, and even there, I noticed that what was far more interesting to me was how people came together to solve the problem rather than solving the problem. Because I saw so many projects fail because not because the technological problem couldn't be solved. We always had really smart programmers, but it was how people came together. And so now I run one part of my life, I run a consultancy, which is about bringing rooms together, which is about creating culture. But then I also do that in other spaces as well. I have a jam night that was running monthly called Imaginary Millions, which is a 2-hour live music jam where anyone can come up to the mic at any point and we find a flow together. So in every space that I am, I'm always looking for how to create safety, which is what Upasna was talking about, so that everyone feels like they can contribute to what's important. And then I also run a leadership coaching practice. Now, I think I might speak to this time. I have a response, a reaction to positive, negative, because then automatically there's a judgment there of whether it's good or bad, and that if something is not positive, then it is not where we should be. So I could offer a reframe and say, what do I think a thriving company culture could be? Because in this time, things may not be positive, things may not be happy. And I think right now, what's important for company culture would be kind of transparency and building trust. So whether things are positive or negative, I think openness at this point is one of the most important things, where people can feel like, I've been coaching leaders all over the world this week, and what I see that leaders are holding on to this uncertainty and feel like they can't share it with their team because they're worried that the team is going to panic. And so then the leader is sitting there going, how do I find the answer in myself that I can give to the team, rather than actually opening up his uncertainty because he believes or she believes that this uncertainty is negative, but in fact it's not positive or negative, but it's actually just being transparent. So I think in this time, I believe transparency is, like emotional transparency, is really important from everyone.
Yeah, of course. Well, that kind of leads on to my next question. There's two angles when you look at company culture. There's obviously someone who's in charge of the company that has to keep the morale up and keep the culture going. And then there's also the team that also plays just as much a part. But looking at it from the business owner's point of view, how do you ensure that the culture within your business remains upbeat and everyone can remain as happy as can be at a time like this? Rob, do you want to jump in?
Sure. So how can the leader maintain? I think building on the point that I made first is that if there is something that is important, so all the panelists have talked about what they believe is important for a thriving culture. Because things are so uncertain now, for the leader, it's important that they wade into the lake first, so to speak. There's a big lake there, which is all this uncertainty, and it's also where the future is, which is also the paradox of it. There's all this uncertainty, and it's all in the same lake: uncertainty and the future. And in order to wade in, the leader needs to wade in first and go, hey, actually, it might seem a bit scary at first, but once we're all in here, it's actually really great. And then, so if let's say, for example, it is emotional transparency as a starting point, then the leader might say, okay, before we start, I just want to talk about where I am right now, and where am my leadership? Here's the things I'm worried about. Here's the opportunities that I see, and be completely transparent within that. And then offer the floor then for other people to share the same way. I've just waded into the lake, and now you join me. And depending on the culture and how it was offline will depend. So the level of trust that was there, that will kind of show up in that moment of like, how strong is that trust to see who else joins that leader in the lake.
Yeah, you need to lead the way, being the leader, of course.
That's right, yeah.
Katrina, do you have any comments on the question? How do the owners and the leaders ensure that the company culture remains as positive, as happy as it can be?
As a leader or one of the execs in your company, it's really good to remember your strengths. and to remember that the key strength you have is the people around you. You may be the leader, but it's not just your company. You made a company with lots of other people, and you gave them a focus. And the great thing is they all brought their ideas and you carried forward, and you will carry forward together. And I'm slightly older, and I've had a few companies before, and everything doesn't always go smooth. And there are bumps in the road, and this is a very big bump, but it isn't anybody's fault. There is a big difference here. It is something that has happened and is challenging us, and is meaning that I think that there are more conversations and Zoom and meetups going on than ever before. And I think the really great thing that comes out of this is the togetherness that is coming, and that will give us strength, and that will get us through these bumps. And, you know, the greatest failures have brought the greatest skills to so many people before.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, taking the positives that you can from a situation.
Well, you have to, you know, because we carry on. And the great positive that I think we're all going back to is people.
Yeah.
And us learning to connect more than ever before.
Yeah, there does feel like a general sense of community and togetherness, even though everyone isn't together and has to be kept separately. There has felt like a community feel. Jess, do you have any comments on that question? What's your view on that one?
I guess wearing two hats from my day-to-day job as a civil servant, obviously in public affairs and with everything going on, and also as a founder, I think it's really important to have a balance, and to also understand and put yourself in the other person's shoes, because, you know, we say culture and business and company culture matters and all these things, but, you know, that is only a part of who you are. You know, you are more than just your job as well, and that works for everyone who is within your company. So, you know, there could be other factors that could inform opinions and maybe more of an emotional response. So I think, you know, being able to put yourself in other people's shoes at all levels, as a business owner, but also as a leader, but maybe not as someone who runs the business, is really important. And I think the other thing for me is also having just a sense of respect, because we live in turbulent times. You know, everyone is working from home. The risk of isolation, loneliness is real. And just, you know, we're just having to pivot all of our normal standard practices to a more digital space. And I would just say, keep innovating with those, keep doing the things that are working, and you're getting positive result from your staff. And also just keep trying to engage with that debate and with the people who are in a similar situation.
Yeah, of course. And like you said, you kind of been on both sides of the coin. What can people that aren't the leaders, that are part of the team, that are just as much important, do to help keep that company culture the way it was before this big circumstance happened, and, you know, help keep the morale high as well? It's not just like the leader's job, like you said, it's everyone's job. So what can the whole team do to help?
If you have a love of memes like I do, a daily check-in with a good meme often helps. That's a personal favorite. And just like sharing and, you know, positive stories. We're being bombarded from the media from all angles. We're all, I mean, for me and my team, both at G&G and in public service, I think we're all facing a bit of fatigue with everything. Everyone's feeling quite down and kind of low energy. So, you know, embracing that and feeling and recognizing that feeling and appreciating it for what it was, but also knowing that, you know, the little things can help. So like a little goodwill story, or random things my dog does, I share those around, like just little things.
Yeah,
that would help.
yeah, definitely. And Katrina, what would your kind of advice be to people that are working from home for the first time, that aren't used to this situation? Obviously, you have Fora space, you deal with a lot of workspaces and people coming in and working together. What would your top advice be to people that this is brand new to and are kind of thrown in at the deep end?
The reason we created Fora is that we wanted to design spaces that were more than just a desk and chair. They were more than an office. They were designed like a house, and they drew so much inspiration from that resi design that people could move around their building according to how they were feeling in the day. So I have to take that mantra back home now. I do not allow myself to sit at my desk every day. I do not allow simply to eat my food at my desk. I need to move away. I make sure that I can't step outside too much. I make sure that I get my exercise in, and I structure my day so that I'm getting breaks throughout the day, and especially getting time with the people in my family that are also in the space. So I'm using all my Fora philosophy in a better way to work at home.
Yeah, definitely. And just as a little side joke, do you have any advice for people not eating their house and home and gaining like 20 pounds while they're doing this?
Don't sit at your desk or your kitchen table all the time. Stand up as well and move around. You're going to get terrible posture as well.
I was just asking for a friend, so I'll let them know.
Bring the fridge as well.
Yeah, definitely. Rob, do you have any advice to add on to that?
I'm going to get a little philosophical here, but because we're inside our homes, what's being revealed to us is what our internal world is like. So however you are as a person, because you're inside so much, you're actually going to discover your internal world a lot more, and you're going to come face to face with that. And so all the patterns that have always served you, all the habits that have served you will serve you better. And all the things that haven't served you well are only going to get more magnified as well. And also I'm seeing that in my relationships as well. Everything that was serving us and everything that wasn't serving us is really being magnified now. So I'm actually, before you start your workday, get your self-care in. Like, it's so important. Get yourself grounded and centered, and get in touch. I'm saying this as a coach, but also just as a human being. Get in touch with your inner resources. You know, where is your breath? Where is your center? Where is your leader? And so then when you arrive on the call, you actually have found yourself before you dive into what's happening, because it can be so easy to get caught in the maelstrom of either work or just the news that's there. And so that's my recommendation is to start the day for yourself.
Yeah.
And then go from there.
That's really interesting, you saying about you're seeing your internal self, because now I'm just picking up on all these things like, oh my goodness. Jess, finally, do you have any advice? I know you've touched on it a bit already, but do you have any advice for people that are working from home for the first time? And any top tips or like the best softwares to use maybe?
Oh, good question. Okay, so I have a husband. He works from home at the moment too. We have a fur baby, so we take turns in walking him, all that stuff. My big tip, if you're working with a spouse or family at home, make up an imaginary co-worker and blame them for all the unwashed dishes in the sink. It actually works really well, and it removes the emotion between you two. Trying it out at the moment. I will let you know how it goes. We're only day 2. In terms of top tips, I think structure is key. For a lot of people, they say to, get dressed as if you would for work. I don't particularly do that. I dress with what is comfy. I have my granny blanket ready to go. Having everything that you need with you. So your laptop, any documents, making sure you've got strategies in place if you have tech issues. Can you work from home without internet? These things are real, and we're all based on Wi-Fi signal more than ever. I had an issue yesterday, sadly, and still kind of working on those strategies to kind of circumnavigate them if needed. I think the other thing is also to take regular breaks. As we're facing lockdown here in London, well, I'm speaking from London and all over the world, making sure that you're at least getting some time away from your desk or wherever you're working, ensuring that you're eating, regularly, healthily. If you can check in with your colleagues on a regular basis or family and friends, that's even better. In terms of apps, I'm a big fan of my what is that called? Calm. The app Calm is quite good. I quite like Calm. I use Zoom for my calling or Google Hangouts because you can also share your presentations and stuff. I also like to record some of my meetings and stuff just in case people are speaking too quickly and I can't keep up. Another really cool feature in Google Hangouts, I don't know if Zoom does this, but you can also turn the captions on. So if, say, you're not a native English speaker or whatever language that they're speaking in, you can actually follow it. So that's quite cool. And also setting a reminder on my phone quite regularly of different tasks I need to do.
Yeah.
And journaling helps too, like just in terms of keeping up with what you need to do and that kind of thing.
Of course. Well, I am conscious of time, but I just have one final question for you, panel. We've seen quite a number of startups recently trying to help with well-being in a situation like this. I know you mentioned Calm, but there's like Moodbeam, that's a bracelet and a software to log how you're feeling, and Limbic we covered in one of our issues, which is an emotion detection AI system that helps to monitor your mental health. Do you guys have any software or programs that you recommend people checking out, or anything that people can use when it comes working from home? Jess, I know you kind of just covered that one, so maybe Katrina, do you have any wellness technologies or anything that might be of use to people?
Willpower is quite good. That comes naturally. I am going to be doing, I go to Free Tribes. They're our yoga partner at Fora, and they have a hot yoga studio, and they're about to launch online classes. And I really want to do that. I don't know, that's not quite technology, but I really want to do that because that's somebody I know and it's a face I recognize. Yeah. So it's continuity for me.
Yeah, of course.
I don't want, this has shaken us all up. And I suddenly don't want to be jumping out looking for new apps with new yoga teachers. I'd like a bit of continuity in my life with my relationships. Yeah. So that's where I'll be going for my wellness. And again, I will be doing my meditation on the Fora YouTube channel because that's the same person that I've been going to meditation classes with for 3 years. And again, I just want that continuity as well. I don't want to shake my whole life up in the air. Yeah. Those relationships are so important to me, and I'm going to carry them on. It's I can't go into a Fora building, but the brilliant thing about technology right now is my Fora world can come to me and my fellow residents, and I can network with them. So that's where technology is really championing for me at the moment.
Amazing. And finally, Rob, do you have any you'd like to add?
The technology that's really useful for me at the moment is the stuff which stops me looking at all this content. So I have my iPhone on grayscale at the moment, which means that it's less colorful, which means I only look at it when I have an intention to look at it. Well, more and more anyway. I used I put times on all of my apps, and even I use the whatever it's called, the blocker in Google as well. So I don't go to while I'm working, I don't go to Facebook and The Guardian constantly, but actually stay focused on what I'm actually doing. So I'm actually using technology to keep me away from content, which is because I kind of want to be present in my house as well, not just online.
Of course, yeah. Definitely. Well, there's some products there that I'm going to check out, and software, so I hope everyone else listening will as well. Oh, Jess, did you want to say?
I've got one thing that I would like to suggest if people haven't heard of it before, Google actually do some, if you've got a Google Pixel or any of the Google products, there's something called Experiments with Google, and they've done a series of digital well-being experiments, and there's one called Desert Island, which basically allows you to like still have all of the apps that you want on there, but only allows you to have the essential ones, which is really cool. And then there's another one called Postbox that kind of schedules all the notifications from certain apps, and it lasts all day and it's free. So I would recommend those.
Amazing. There's so many technologies out there to help us in a time like this. Well, thank you very much, panel. I know we've run over, so we might not have time for questions. There's none popped up, so if anyone has got a dying question, please do ask now. But if not, I'm sure we can get them over to the panelists. I've got your contact details, so we can always pass them on if you're happy to. But I just wanted to say a massive thank you to our panelists, speakers, and Gabi, I know she's had to dash, but thank you everyone for being here with us today and helping so much. I want to say thank you to all our attendees for joining my first webinar and first event. So I hope it wasn't totally a car crash. No, I'm joking. It was so much easier with you guys, so thank you. And finally, a big shout out, thank you again to Mauser. So check out their details that will be on your mailer shortly. You will receive with the brand new magazine, my first one. And thank you to my team who helped me so much that they don't even realize how much they helped me. But yeah, so thank you very much, everyone. Check your inboxes. And happy reading, and any questions or queries, just please do get in touch with us.